Art Stories now features the very famous guru, choreographer and performer Shama Bhate. In the previous episodes, we saw her initial years of training and her perception towards so many areas of teaching and also her perspective on what learning is. Today, we are going to see what her perspective towards her area of strength and forte, which is choreography, is. So I'm directly entering into the bang-on subject, which is her area of specialization and which we all from Pune look up to, because according to all of us, she's the only prolific choreographer in Pune who comes up with some wonderful productions every year, sometimes even twice a year. So Shamata, I'm going to directly enter into this topic.
Namaskar.
Of course, I welcome you to this episode. I think we have been continuing having this dialogue, so probably I was in the flow of the whole discussion.
That's right.
So I will directly enter into the topic of what is your perception of choreography?
First of all, thank you, because this remark makes me, it's flattering that you all look up to my work, because I know what all kinds of work you people have been doing as well. So it's really flattering, thank you. And I also am very happy to get this opportunity to talk about my perception of choreography. I know this area is not very specific. All of us, we have our own definition and perception of choreographic work. So I would say that my choreographic work is definitely based on traditional idiom of Kathak. That is the only language I really know. I have studied and am trained in, so it comes naturally to me. If I have to use some other idiom, probably it would be an effort. But this idiom, I always have felt, is never really cheated me. I could express whatever I wanted to through this idiom. I could sometimes redefine it, sometimes modify it. It is a flexible idiom. It is a very adaptable form. So trying to broaden the boundaries of tradition, going deep, because in tradition I have observed that you have so many possibilities, a lot of potential. So I try to, in my choreographic work, I try to find more and more possibilities of Kathak idiom to get where I really need to or want to.
Yes. In our discussions, and even I remember in previous conversations, there was always this point which you have raised, that tradition gives you a certain structure, and when we are doing a traditional concert, we work within that structure. We have a certain pattern and we fill it up with a certain expected mini structures within. And you specifically underline that I don't call it choreography. Could you elaborate it as what is your perception?
I would like to. First of all, I would give you an example. Like today, in this conversation, you say, oh Shamata, this is my topic and how would you start on a choreography? What happens is I have a good start. I know my tradition so well. So even if I don't think about something different, something of my own, I still have a format ready. And I have the idiom ready. I have the music ready. So it is like revisiting the same thing with a different perception, I would say. And that is the reason I think tradition provides you everything. Tradition gives you a structure, tradition especially tells you what to do and what not to do. Tradition also gives you the music format. Like you start choreographing, I don't call it choreography, I like to call it composing. Or Hindi mein jaise bolte maine socha. We would, as a young girl, I remember all our gurus always said, maine socha. Ye dekho maine kya socha hai. So it was within the boundaries of traditional. But mind you, they were going deep. It wasn't a copying. they were going deep and trying to find the possibilities within. And that's how I learned, and that's why I feel that if I have to, for example, take Chhed-Chhad, I already learned Chhed-Chhad and seen n number of Chhed-Chhad, so that my computer, my hard disk provides me the data and I compile it together, maybe in a very convincing way, but still I realize inside me that it is compiling. I am putting it together, I am assembling it together. So that is the reason I always think that it is more of composing thing. And in a traditional setup, you know that we are all expected to bring our, if you learn 4 tumris, 5th we have to know how to treat it ourselves.
For Kathak, its music is extremely significant and important, also because it has its wide repertoire of the tal, which is very unusual in the context of Indian classical dance forms. That is the only dance form where in the repertoire a major portion and major time is given to exposition of tal. So that is the rhythmic aspect, and yet it is music. And again, as we call in the traditional parlance, what musical notes and music creates. In the context of your productions, how important and what is your journey of finding the right music? Does the music come before choreography? Does it come after it, or does it go parallel? How has been your connection with music?
Parimal, I think it's not only for Kathak, but all Indian classical dance styles, music and dance go hand in hand. Sometimes it's difficult to even separate them, music first, or, and I'm not just talking about traditional compositions. Because the nature of dance is such that music and dance go hand in hand. Kathak music, I would say, traditionally was from a good range. Like we start from Vilambit, go up to Dhrut, from slow to the fast. Again, we use very classical Indian raga sangeet, but we also use lokdhun. So again, 2 different. So we use Vilambit Tintal, we use Dadara Kerwa. So it gives different flavor, the rhythm also, the ragas also. Like we use Yaman, and we also use Kalavati, Ragini. As you know, we also use so many like Kirwani, which are that way south oriented ragas, but they are so much part of classical music, northern Indian classical music, that you see people using Kirwani, you see people using Hausadvani. The point I am trying to make is Kathak is wide open for different kind of music, like contemporary music people are using, people are experimenting with flamenco, as you know. So the form is, like I said, flexible.
So if I ask you, if you I invite you to revisit your productions, which 3 or 4 productions would you say that, okay, here the musical concept was different, or here it was a challenge, or here it totally was different? Because I remember for Le Monde du Silence, the musical soundscape was very different. For Kasturba, it totally had a very different texture to it, and Mahabharat had its own musical story. So under art stories, we would also like to know what is the musical story of every choreographer for one's productions.
So we start with Nishabd Bhed. So I would like to just tell you a little story about how it started, because it's connected with music. This director of Alliance Francaise said, do you want to do something different? And I always had thought about this, that does music is coupled with dance, or dance is coupled with music, and do we have to have music? What happens if we do not use music at all? It happens in the West, like we all know. It happens whether the Indian dance, especially my own Kathak dance, would be established and would it sustain, how long it would sustain in total silence. Because I have great faith in my visual, and I felt that visual is, it is a visual poetry, and why do we have to have the, all the time why do we have to have the music? Of course, as a practical person I would say, I also know that I can't have silent dance for 1 hour. So music is the main thing. So I do not want to deny that, but I still want to experiment. So what do I do? So I told him that I want to always have really wanted to put my dance across in silence and see whether it works. That time it was whether it works. And then he came out with this idea that this film, Le Monde du Silence, this is the 50th year of this Oscar winning documentary. Would you like to couple both the ideas? And I jumped at it. So I had the one more advantage of having the visual down below from the ocean, and I also, so I thought of integrating the screen space and the stage space using the experts from the documentary. And of course the documentary was about world of silence, and I called it Exploring Silence, Nishabd Bhed. So of course after that I gave it my perspective about how I explore. So music was very important again, and to make the silence vibrant, the music was important. And I remember you asking me this, that what is the difference between a pause and a silence for you? And I feel pause is very important. In every tihai we have pause. We always remember, we have pause in 2 moments. So how long can you extend it? That was my point. And how long? And what would be the 2 sides? So, and the last challenge was there were about 13 girls. So how do you keep them together? All 13 girls in a total silence, because we all know our base is music, to keep everybody together, to look that for the visual to look harmonious, homogeneous. They didn't have nothing to hold on to.
They didn't have gurus also, I guess.
They didn't have the gurus, and they didn't have anything to hold on to. So what do we do? So I said, and this is very interesting, I said I must choose the pieces which are very familiar, not to just my girls, but to the Kathak world. Like, you know that Alaripu, this is the speed. If you change Acha, he has changed the Alaripu speed. That's what a Bharatanatyam dancer would say. That's what I did, that I chose a third speed, which is within the range, same for everybody. So they already have that conditioning. This speed is there for 10 years in the brain cells, the body cells. Again the Gat. Everybody would say na din din na na. Nobody would say Gat in na din din. So I took advantage of the association or conditioning, whatever, and I placed the silent pieces, I could say I sandwiched them with 2 vibrant pieces of music. So that was the process. And for music, I was determined not to use percussion because this is silence, exploring silence. So percussion gives this, which I tried to avoid. That is the reason I didn't use ghungroos also. So exploring silence, like I didn't want friction all the time, which I feel. Then I had to have the lay. If I let go of percussion, I have to have the rhythm. So I chose the music which will still give me rhythm. And also percussion gives you avartan. We have this avartan concept. So it makes definite boundary for you. I wanted to show the expanse.
And in the context of Kasturba, again the musical texture was very different. So here we are talking about Le Monde des Sonores, where you are playing with silence and you're very aware of the fact that the theme demands you not to take percussion. When it comes to Kasturba, it is about the inner conflict and the conflicts in the minds of Kasturba. And how would you decide a musical structure for that kind of a production?
I chose to show wisdom of Kasturba. I thought to myself that this is immediately after the independence, it's before the independence, right from, because Kasturba didn't see the independence. So it had, if I compare it to Nishabd Bhed, it didn't have a time frame. And this gave me a definite time frame, that independence before independence. Again, it had a very social context, that how people in that situation, how people, the atmosphere, the cultural context, everybody was like for independence. Nobody thought about their private lives, some people didn't think about their education, they just were thinking about independence. And Kasturba was the leader for this thought. She was Gandhiji's wife, so she was with it. So I had to bring in that social context to my dance and to my, of course, music, right? Then there were 2-3 more concerns when I started out. I didn't want my dancers, none of my dancers, right from the outset I decided that nobody would be Gandhiji, nobody would be Kasturba. Because I cannot, even in my wildest dream, I cannot imagine Kasturba taking a stance of Kathak. So how do I
Bridge that thought.
And how do I
negotiate with that whole...
negotiate with this? So I said Kasturba and Gandhiji would be there in spirit. And this I again got it from tradition. We have Sadharanikaran, universalization, that whatever Kasturba's aspirations, pain, frustration, that all is there in Kathak or Bharatanatyam. Or now I have to just say, establish that this raw emotion or extract with the emotion I am extracting is Kasturba's. That I had to fill in that bridge. And I decided a format where I would choose the time period and all the girls from people of that period. And then they lead to the dance sequences where they were in spirit, Kasturba and Gandhi, or people there. Like that I
devised.
Concocted it.
You devised it.
And then I started off, and so I knew that the sound had to be Indian.
And how would you tell the musician and give a background of all of this and decide the instruments? How does that work? Because the design of music for such a production is very different from Raman Dusara's. For such a production, there are so many associated meanings. There is a character, and you have to stick to the storyline. You can't just go and have your flights of fantasy. It's almost like following a script. So how do you script music for such a production where you're doing something on a legendary?
First of all, I knew that I wanted like this, and Narendra Bhede did the music, so we sat together. And I said that these are 5-6 episodes I fixed, and I want music like this. The moment they went to Africa, I have to have the music also has to indicate that they are not in India anymore. They are facing this, so it has to, we deliberately thought that we'll use Western sound. Again, my first episode was their togetherness immediately after the marriage. So the togetherness was such that they wouldn't even allow a fly into their togetherness, just a very specific space, real togetherness. So I wanted I use my form thought. Again, it doesn't look like thought, but I know that it was thought. And because I wanted the pulse, so the pulse was together for me. So that's what I chose. And I recorded how I wanted to go, not with music, but like I would say, I was sure that I wanted Tishra Jati because I had the association of waltz as well. So dha, then. So I went and recorded this, dha, then, na, dha, then, dha, ge, kit, then, na, dha, then, da, tagin, then, na, da, then, na, da, 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 da.